She was only 3 years old, barely tall enough to reach the kitchen counter, and she just wanted to sing one little song. Nobody took her seriously. Nobody except the one man in that room who had everything money could buy, and somehow still recognized something everyone else had missed. What happened next silenced a room full of people, humiliated someone who thought she was untouchable, and left a tiny little girl holding something she never expected. If you think you know how this story ends, I promise you don't. Because sometimes the smallest voice in the room. Hey, welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome to the family. This is the place where we share real, emotional, true-to-life stories that will move you, surprise you, and remind you that people are more than what they seem. Before we dive in, drop your flag in the comments right now. Where in the world are you watching this from? We love seeing you all. And listen, this story, it's going to catch you completely off guard. Just wait for section 3. Trust us on that one. Some people are born into wealth. And some people are born into a little one-bedroom apartment in Phoenix, Arizona, with a mop in one hand and a dream they're not quite sure about yet. Margaret Reyes had been cleaning other people's houses for 11 years. She wasn't ashamed of it. Not even a little. She'd raised her daughter, little Lily, on that income. Just the two of them in a small, sun-warmed apartment on the east side of Phoenix, where the neighbors knew your name and the landlord occasionally fixed things when you called twice. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Lily had just turned 3 in April. She had her mother's brown eyes and her late grandmother's wild curly hair, the kind that puffed up in humidity and made strangers smile on the street. She was, by any measure, the happiest child Margaret had ever seen. The kind of kid who sang while she ate breakfast, who talked to butterflies, who once cried at a cartoon cloud because it looked lonely. Margaret's job at the Caldwell estate had started about 8 months earlier. James Caldwell, 45 years old, self-made tech billionaire, quiet in the way that powerful men sometimes are, had hired her through a staffing agency. The estate was enormous. 6 bedrooms, a pool, a chef's kitchen with appliances Margaret couldn't name, and a guest wing that sat empty most of the time. Mr. Caldwell was a man of routine. He was up by 5:30 a.m. He drank black coffee. He answered emails before the sun rose. He was polite to Margaret, genuinely polite, not the distracted kind, and he always left a cold bottle of water on the counter for her when she arrived on hot days. You didn't have to do that, she told him once early on. He'd shrugged, not looking up from his laptop. It's 104 degrees outside. You're a human being. She'd smiled and gone back to work. Margaret had no illusions about their relationship. He was her employer. She was his employee. She cleaned his house 3 times a week, laundered his linens, kept his kitchen spotless. On days when her babysitter fell through, which happened more than she liked, she had to bring Lily along. She always asked permission first. Mr. Caldwell never said no. Lily, for her part, was fascinated by the estate. She'd waddle around behind Margaret with a little toy dust cloth, pretending to help. She'd press her tiny face against the glass of the fish tank in the study and whisper secrets to the koi. She called Mr. Caldwell the tall man, because she hadn't quite gotten his name down yet. He'd overheard her once and laughed, really laughed, in a way that Margaret noticed because it seemed like something he didn't do very often. For 8 months this was their world. Quiet, functional, respectful. And then, in February, Victoria arrived. Victoria Hale was 32, gorgeous in the way that magazine covers are gorgeous, sharp and deliberate and always aware of how she looked in any given light. She was James Caldwell's fiancée, recently moved in from Los Angeles after their engagement was announced. She wore silk robes to breakfast. She had opinions about the thread count of towels. She referred to Margaret more than once as the cleaning woman, not unkindly exactly, but with a flatness that made the distinction feel very intentional. Margaret kept her head down. She was professional. She needed this job. But Lily didn't understand flat tones or professional distance. Lily saw a woman in a sparkly engagement ring and was absolutely enchanted. "Pretty," Lily said one morning, pointing at Victoria's ring with a jam-covered finger. Victoria pulled her hand back like she'd been reached at by a small, sticky animal. "Yes," she said without looking at Lily. "Don't touch." Margaret apologized and gently redirected her daughter. But something about the way Victoria had recoiled, so quickly, so instinctively, stayed with her. It was small. She told herself it was small. The weeks passed. Victoria redecorated parts of the house. She replaced some of the furniture in the living room with pieces that were more her style. She hired a personal assistant who followed her around with a tablet. She started planning what she called the engagement party of the decade, which was set for the last Saturday in March, right there at the estate. 300 guests, caterers, a live string quartet, custom floral arrangements flown in from Miami. Margaret was asked to work extra days in the lead-up to the party, deep cleaning rooms that hadn't been used in months. She agreed. The extra money would help with Lily's spring clothes. The Saturday of the party, Margaret came early, 7 a.m., to help with setup. Her babysitter had cancelled the night before. She'd called Mr. Caldwell directly, embarrassed, to ask if it was okay to bring Lily just for the morning hours, just until the guests arrived. Of course, he'd said. No hesitation. Lily arrived in her favorite outfit, a little yellow dress with white daisies on it, white sandals, and a plastic butterfly clip in her hair that she'd picked out herself. She thought she looked like a princess. Margaret thought she looked like sunshine. By 10 a.m., Victoria had already walked through the downstairs twice with her event planner, approving final touches. When she spotted Lily sitting quietly in the corner of the kitchen, eating a banana and humming to herself, Victoria stopped. She looked at the child, then at the yellow dress, then at Margaret. "She's wearing that," Victoria said, not quite to anyone in particular, but loudly enough that two of the caterers glanced up. Margaret paused her polishing. "Excuse me." Victoria gestured vaguely at Lily. "That dress. To my party." She gave a small, dismissive laugh, turning to her event planner. "I mean, look at it." The event planner smiled tightly and said nothing. Margaret felt the heat rise up the back of her neck. "She's 3, she said carefully. "She won't be here when the guests arrive. She's just—" "I'm just saying," Victoria said, already turning away. "Some people have no sense of occasion." She walked out of the kitchen. Her heels clicked down the hallway. Lily looked up at her mother with banana still on her chin. She hadn't understood the words, but she'd felt the tone the way children always do. "Mama," Lily said softly, "is my dress pretty?" Margaret crouched down and fixed the butterfly clip in her daughter's hair. "Your dress," she said quietly, her voice steady, "is absolutely beautiful." Speech balloon. Do you think Margaret should have said something back to Victoria in that moment? What would you have done? Tell us in the comments below. The party hadn't even started yet, and already something invisible in that house had shifted. Margaret finished her morning work with the kind of focused silence that people use when they're holding something down. She scrubbed and polished and arranged, and she didn't say another word about what Victoria had said. She had Rent to think about. She had Lily to think about. She had 100 practical reasons to keep her head down, and she used every single one of them. Lily, mercifully, had moved on in the way that 3-year-olds do. Within 20 minutes she'd forgotten Victoria entirely, and was deeply engrossed in rearranging a pile of decorative lemons in the fruit bowl into what she called a family. The big lemon was the dad. The little lemon was the baby. She narrated the whole thing in a whisper. James Caldwell came downstairs at 11 a.m. He was dressed casually for now. Jeans, a gray pullover, since the party didn't start until 3. He poured himself coffee, nodded at Margaret, and then stopped when he saw Lily holding court with her lemon family. "Who's this?" he asked. "That's Gerald," Lily said, holding up the big lemon with complete seriousness. "He's the dad. But he's sad today." James Caldwell looked at Margaret. Margaret shrugged slightly. "Don't ask me. Gerald's been having a rough week." He smiled, that real smile again, the quiet one, and crouched down to Lily's level. "What's wrong with Gerald?" he asked her. Lily thought about this. "He misses his mom," she finally said. Something passed across the man's face. It was quick, and Margaret almost missed it. But she saw it. A flash of something old and private. "Well," he said gently, "I hope Gerald feels better soon." He stood up, took his coffee, and went back to his office. The party began filling up by 3:30. 300 people who all knew how to dress for a billionaire's engagement party arrived in a steady, well-perfumed stream. The string quartet played something classical and lovely near the pool. The caterers moved like choreography. Victoria floated through it all in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than Margaret's car, accepting compliments with a practiced grace. Margaret and Lily were in the kitchen. Margaret was supposed to leave at 4. That was the arrangement. But one of the catering staff had called in sick, and the event coordinator had asked, a little desperately, if she could stay another hour just to help manage the kitchen flow. She said yes. She got Lily settled in the corner with her toy bag and a juice box and told her to stay put and be quiet. Lily was very good at staying put. She was less reliable about being quiet. At about 4:15, while the party hummed along in the living room and garden, Lily climbed down from her chair, toy bag in hand, and wandered. Margaret was in the middle of helping unload a tray situation when she realized, with a specific cold panic only parents know, that her daughter was no longer in her corner. She excused herself quickly and went looking. She found Lily in the hallway just off the main living room, standing near the edge of the open double doors, looking in at the party with wide eyes. She'd found a spot where she could see without really being seen, behind a large flower arrangement, half hidden, just watching all the people and the lights and the music. Margaret reached her in seconds. "Lily, baby, you can't be in here." "Mama," Lily whispered, not taking her eyes off the room. "They're singing." Margaret listened. The string quartet had shifted to something different. A slow, sweet melody. A few couples had begun to sway near the garden doors. "Yes, baby. It's music." "I can sing too," Lily said. "I know you can." "I know a song," Lily said. She said it the way she said everything. Completely, totally, with her whole heart. Margaret started to guide her gently back toward the kitchen. "Later, okay? Not right now." But fate, or something like it, had other plans. Because at that exact moment Victoria, standing near the center of the living room with a glass of champagne and a small circle of her closest friends, happened to turn toward the hallway. She saw Lily. And Lily, freed from her mother's gentle grip for just 1 second, stepped forward into the light of the doorway. The yellow daisy dress caught the warm light of the chandelier. The plastic butterfly clip glinted. Lily stood there, all 3 years of her, completely unaware that 300 people could see her if they turned around, looking into that glittering room with absolute wonder. Victoria stared. Then, in a low voice she clearly didn't mean to carry, but did because the string quartet had paused between songs, she said it. "Oh my God! Is the cleaning lady's kid in here right now?" Her friends laughed. One of them covered her mouth. Another murmured something that made the group laugh again. The sound carried. Margaret heard it from 3 feet behind Lily. The entire moment, the pause in the music, the laughter, the chandelier light on her daughter's yellow dress, froze like a photograph. And then Lily turned around and looked up at her mother with the most simple, trusting expression a human being can have. "Mama," she said, "can I sing my song?" Every single thing Margaret had held together for the last 7 hours almost broke apart in that 1 second. She looked at her daughter. That butterfly clip. At those brown eyes with no idea what had just been laughed at. "Not tonight, baby," she said quietly. And she picked Lily up, all 32 pounds of her, and walked back toward the kitchen. Behind her, she could hear the string quartet starting up again. And somewhere behind that, the low, easy sound of Victoria Hale laughing about something else entirely. Speech balloon. Have you ever been in a moment where someone embarrassed you or your child in public, and you had to hold it together? Tell us your story below. You're not alone. And then, everything changed in a single moment, and nobody in that room saw it coming. It was 5:47 p.m. The party was in full swing. The garden lights had come on. The champagne was flowing. Victoria was on her third speech of the evening, holding court near the fireplace with a group of guests who laughed on cue and nodded like they were being paid to agree with everything she said. James Caldwell had been circulating the room for the past hour, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, doing the thing you do at your own engagement party when you're a very wealthy man and 300 people expect something from you. He was polite. He was present. But he was not, Margaret noticed as she passed through with a tray, particularly joyful. He looked like a man performing a feeling rather than having one. Margaret was almost done. She'd made a quiet decision, somewhere between the kitchen and the hallway, that this would be her last day at the Caldwell estate. She would go home tonight, put Lily to bed, and in the morning she would call the staffing agency and ask to be reassigned. She didn't have the words for what Victoria had done. She couldn't call it abuse, couldn't call it cruelty, not exactly. But she knew what it felt like to have her child laughed at in a room full of people. And she knew she wouldn't put either of them through it again. She'd collected Lily from the kitchen, put her coat on her, and was heading toward the side door, the staff exit, the quiet one, when it happened. Lily stopped walking. "Mama." The music stopped. Margaret listened. She was right. The string quartet had paused between sets. The room had that slightly awkward murmur of a party mid-breath. And Lily, 3 years old, yellow dress, butterfly clip, absolutely no understanding of social situations, walked back toward the hallway. Lily. But the child was already there. In the doorway. Again. And this time she didn't just stand there. She opened her mouth. And she sang. It was, "You Are My Sunshine." The old song. The simple one. The one Margaret had sung to her every single night since she was born, in that small apartment in Phoenix, in the dark, until the child fell asleep. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Lily's voice was small. It wobbled on some of the notes. Her pronunciation of sunshine came out sunshaheen. She held her hands clasped in front of her yellow dress like she was performing at Carnegie Hall. The room went quiet. Not politely quiet. Not the trained, obligatory quiet of a social gathering. But genuinely, completely, stunningly quiet. 300 people in champagne and suits and silk and diamonds. And not one of them made a sound. "You make me happy when skies are gray," Lily sang on. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked at her mother, across the hallway, frozen, one hand over her mouth, and she sang directly to her, the way she always did at bedtime. And then something happened that nobody expected. James Caldwell, 45 years old, self-made billionaire, quiet man, walked through his own party, past his own guests, past his own fiancée, and crouched down next to a 3-year-old in a yellow daisy dress. And he started to sing with her. His voice was low and a little rough, like someone who hadn't sung in a very long time. But he knew every word. "You'll never know, dear, how much I love you." Lily looked at him with huge eyes. Then she grinned, a 3-year-old grin, the absolute fullest kind, and sang louder. They finished the song together. The last note faded. For 2 full seconds, the room was completely silent. And then it broke open. Not applause exactly, something more than that. Something more human. People were crying. Grown adults in formal wear, standing in a billionaire's living room, crying at a 3-year-old in a daisy dress and a man who'd remembered something he'd forgotten. Margaret stood in the hallway and couldn't move. She found out later. Much later, from one of the kitchen staff who'd heard it from the personal assistant who'd been in the room, that "You Are My Sunshine" had been the song James Caldwell's mother used to sing to him. That she had died when he was 11. That he had not heard it sung like that, unself-consciously, innocently, just for love, in over 30 years. He hadn't planned to sing. He hadn't even thought about it. He'd just heard Lily's voice, and his feet had moved. Victoria Hale stood near the fireplace and watched her fiancé sing a children's song with a Maid's Toddler in front of 300 people. She did not cry. Her smile was the kind that doesn't reach anywhere near the eyes. Speech balloon. What would you do if you were in Margaret's place in that moment? Standing in that hallway, watching your 3-year-old change an entire room? Tell us honestly in the comments. We want to hear from you. After the song ended, Margaret stood in the hallway feeling like the ground had shifted under her feet, because in every way that mattered, it had. Lily, satisfied with her performance in the way only a 3-year-old can be after doing something extraordinary without knowing it, walked back to her mother, tugged her sleeve and said, "Mama, can I have more juice?" Margaret laughed. She actually laughed, a short, surprised, slightly tearful sound, and hugged her daughter tightly and said, "Yes, baby. You can have all the juice." She didn't speak to James Caldwell that night. Not after the song. She slipped out the side door at 6:30 with Lily on her hip, drove home in the dark, gave her daughter a bath, and sat on the edge of her bed for a long time after Lily fell asleep. She still planned to call the agency in the morning. 3 days passed. On the 4th day she got a call, not from the agency, but from a number she recognized as the estate's main line. She almost didn't pick up. Ms. Reyes. It was James Caldwell himself. Not his assistant. Not a coordinator. "Mr. Caldwell," she said carefully. There was a brief pause. "I want to apologize," he said, "for what was said to you and your daughter at the party. I wasn't in the room when it happened. I was told about it afterward." Another pause. "Victoria told me it was just a joke." Margaret said nothing. "It wasn't a joke," he said. "And I should have said that to her much sooner and much more directly than I did. I'm sorry that happened in my home." "Thank you," Margaret said. She meant it. "I also want to ask if you'd be willing to come back," he said. "I understand completely if the answer is no. But I'd like you to know what Lily did the other night, what she reminded me of." He stopped. Started again. "That mattered. More than I can explain over the phone." She went back. She wasn't sure exactly why. Maybe it was practical. The job paid well, she knew the house, it was stable. Maybe it was something harder to name. Maybe she'd seen something in James Caldwell that she hadn't expected to see. A man capable of being genuinely moved. And she thought, quietly, that people who could still be moved by a 3-year-old singing an old song deserved the benefit of the doubt. Things at the estate changed in the weeks that followed. Slowly, but noticeably, Victoria had pulled back. She spent more time in Los Angeles, supposedly managing wedding venue arrangements. She called from there. He sent texts. She was present technically, just not physically. And when she was home, there was a new coolness between her and James that hadn't been there before. Something had been named between them, even if the naming had been quiet. Then came the morning Margaret arrived to find not just the usual cold water bottle on the counter, but something else beside it. Small box, gold foil, a white ribbon, her name on a card. She stood looking at it for a long moment before she opened it. Inside was a gold medal. Not a real competition medal, but a custom one, beautifully made, engraved with words on the back that she had to read twice. "For the best performance of You Are My Sunshine ever recorded. Lily Reyes, age 3. She heard footsteps behind her. She turned around. James Caldwell stood in the kitchen doorway, holding 2 coffee cups. "I had it made," he said simply. "I thought she should have it." Margaret looked at the medal, then at him, then back at the medal. She's going to lose it in about 4 minutes, she said. She loses everything. He smiled. Then I'll have another one made. She brought Lily the following Tuesday. Lily held the medal with both hands and stared at it for a full 30 seconds, which is a very long time for a 3-year-old. Then she held it up to show her mother. Mama, she said, eyes enormous. I won. You won, Margaret confirmed. Lily looked at the tall man. Thank you, tall man, she said formally. He crouched down to her level. You're very welcome. And then Lily said with complete sincerity, You can have it back if you want. I don't mind. He laughed. That full laugh again. The real one. Margaret quietly took a breath and looked at the ceiling because she was not going to cry in her employer's kitchen. She was absolutely not. She cried a little. Victoria came home that weekend. She found Lily's gold medal sitting on the kitchen counter, where Lily had left it that morning while she rearranged the Lemon family. Victoria picked it up, read the engraving, looked at it for a long time, and then set it back down very carefully, exactly where she found it, and walked out of the kitchen without saying a word. Speech balloon. Have you ever had a moment where someone, maybe even a child, reminded you of something you'd forgotten about yourself? Share it below. Those moments matter more than we realize. Some finales don't arrive with fanfare. Some of them come quietly, the way the most important things always do. It was a Tuesday in early May, about 6 weeks after the engagement party, and the Arizona morning had that specific quality that only exists for about 3 weeks a year. Cool enough to open the windows, warm enough not to close them. Margaret had her radio on low while she cleaned the study. Lily was in the kitchen with her lemons. James Caldwell was on the phone in his office down the hall. Margaret could hear the shape of his voice. Not the words, just the rhythm. Then the silence. Then his footsteps coming to the study door. He turned. Victoria and I ended the engagement, he said. Margaret set down her cloth. I'm sorry, she said. Are you? He asked, not unkindly. Just genuinely curious. She thought about it honestly. I'm sorry you're going through something hard, she said. I'm not sure I'm sorry about the rest of it. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. Like he maybe needed to hear it. She said the reason she kept mocking Lily was because... He paused, seeming to choose his words with care. Because she felt like Lily got something from me that she didn't. Attention. Warmth. Something real. He looked at Margaret. She wasn't wrong about that. She was wrong about what she did with it. Margaret said nothing. Sometimes silence is the most honest thing. He walked into the study and looked out the window at the backyard, where the bougainvillea was in full pink bloom along the fence. My mother used to say that the truest thing about a person is what they do when a child is watching, he said. She said children can't be fooled. They always know. Margaret thought about Lily singing in that doorway. Unself-conscious, unafraid. Singing directly to the person she loved most in the world. Lily knew, Margaret said quietly. The morning Victoria made the comment about her dress, Lily didn't understand the words. But she asked me afterward if her dress was pretty. She felt it. He was quiet for a long time. I should have paid more attention to what Lily felt, he said. Earlier. You came when it mattered, Margaret said simply. He turned from the window. And that was when he said the thing she hadn't expected, the thing she would carry with her for the rest of her life, not because it was grand, but because it was honest. Ms. Reyes, he said, I've spent 20 years building things, companies, portfolios, properties. I've gotten very good at knowing what something is worth. He paused. That night, watching your daughter stand in that doorway and sing with her whole heart, I realized I'd spent a long time being surrounded by people who were very good at making things look valuable. And I'd almost forgotten what something actually valuable feels like. Margaret looked at him steadily. She's 3, she said. She still thinks lemons have feelings. He smiled. I know. There was a comfortable silence, The kind you can only have with someone who's seen the same thing at the same time. There's a music program at the Children's Development Center downtown, he said. They have a waiting list. I happen to know the director. He said it very simply, like it was a small thing. I thought if you'd want, Lily might like it. Margaret was quiet for a moment. She would love it, she finally said. 6 months later, Lily Reyes walked into her first real music class with her butterfly clip in her hair and her gold medal in her coat pocket, because she still carried it everywhere, though she'd graduated from losing it to merely misplacing it for 7-minute stretches. She was the youngest child in the class by almost a year. She was also, by any objective measure, the loudest. Within 4 minutes she had sung "You Are My Sunshine" for 3 different classmates, told the teacher that her name was Lily and I can sing and also I have a medal, and reorganized the cubbies by color without being asked. Margaret sat in the observation area outside the glass with a cup of coffee she'd bought from the machine down the hall, and she watched her daughter exist in the world. Fully, fearlessly, entirely herself, and she thought about all the moments that had led to this one. A yellow daisy dress. A room full of people who laughed. A man who crouched down and sang. A gold medal engraved with a child's name. None of it was how she'd planned. All of it was how it needed to go. Here is what Margaret Reyes understood by the end of that year about people. The ones who mock what they don't understand are always afraid of something. And the ones who crouch down to a child's level to sing an old song, they are the ones who haven't forgotten who they really are. Jealousy is a heavy thing to carry. Victoria Hale carried it into every room she entered, and it kept her from seeing what was right in front of her. Not a rival, not a threat. A 3-year-old in a yellow dress, singing to her mother. The most dangerous thing about a small child's love is how clearly it shows you everything you've stopped being. Victoria couldn't face that mirror. James Caldwell walked toward it, and found something he thought he'd lost at 11 years old, in a house in Ohio, the last night his mother sang to him. To everyone watching this right now, thank you. Thank you for sitting with this story, for feeling it, for letting it matter. We live in a world that moves very fast, and sometimes the most radical thing you can do is stop. Listen. Let a small voice remind you of something true. Lily didn't change that room because she was talented. She changed it because she was real. And real is the rarest, most powerful thing there is. Be real today. Someone out there needs to see it. If this story touched your heart in any way, hit that like button right now. Not for us. For Lily. For every child who's ever been dismissed and then proved everyone wrong just by being exactly who they are. Subscribe to this channel because every week we bring you a story like this one. Real, human, emotional stories that will make you feel something true. Stories that remind you people are more than what they seem. And in the comments, tell us, which moment in this story hit you hardest? Was it the medal? The song? The silence of that room? We read every single comment. Everyone, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. You know who that person is. Send it to them right now. From all of us here, thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling things. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like your dress isn't beautiful. See you next time.